Welcome back, everybody, to our summer series, How to Be a Leader in Today's World.
Welcome back, everybody. Today's episode is dedicated to intentional leadership with a focus on agility. Agile leadership is really crucial for success in today's rapidly changing business environment. And agile leaders are those that are able to adapt quickly. It's those that are able to embrace change and those that can foster innovation within their teams. So they really prioritize learning, collaboration, and look at empowering their employees to make decisions so that they can really pivot quickly and achieve any goals that are set. But, how do they do this? Well, more on that in just a few moments. If you haven't joined us for any of our LinkedIn Live events before, let's just share a little bit about us. My name is Lisa Rogers. I am an ICF certified professional coach with over 20 years of industry experience. And I qualified as a coach to be 5 years ago now, and have had the privilege of working with a wide range of senior leaders from a variety of industries across the world. And I'm fascinated about how we learn, how we develop, and how we also adapt to different situations. And I'm just really looking forward to spending the next 30 minutes with you all. And with me is Pernilla.
Yeah, and I'm Pernilla Baumann, and I bring over 28 years of leadership experience from the international luxury hospitality industry and more than 10 years as a coach. As an MCC certified coach with the ICF, I blend practical wisdom with coaching expertise to really empower professionals and organizations. My background as a high performance coach and seasoned total years, I would say, really equips me to help you unlock your potential and achieve your goals. And I'm dedicated to your success, and I'm ready to support you in navigating challenges and driving transformation and elevating your performance to new heights. So that was just a little bit about us if you haven't been with us before, but let's dig in. So if you've joined us before, last time we spoke about clarity, which is really, really paramount. The next crucial step is really demonstrating agility in leadership to ensure that both you and your business thrive. Now, this topic of being agile and resilient is an area that Lisa and we receive a lot of questions about. So hopefully we're able to answer a lot of these questions in the next 30 minutes. So we're going to share with you some insights on how to become agile and stay resilient, especially when dealing with a crisis. And if you remember from our previous sessions, or if you've attended any of our webinars, when we talk crisis, we are looking at it may be a little or a big crisis, depending on your perception and how it impacts you. So that's just something to really keep in mind when we're talking crisis.
Yeah, I agree, Pernilla. I mean, and in these challenging times, our ability to adapt quickly and maintain our strength is really crucial for both the organisational success, but also our personal success as a leader. And today, we're going to outline 3 actionable coaching points to help you develop your agility further, to enable you to navigate through crises effectively. But before we do, Pernilla, to start with, what would you say some of the key characteristics of agile leaders are that you've experienced and worked with before?
I think that's a great question, Lisa, and I think it's important for anybody who's listening in or looking at this in review to reflect over it as I go through them, kind of make a small self-inventory that can help you, because it's all about, awareness and knowing where we're standing. So do a little self-inventory and remember that we all have a bit of each of these characteristics that I'm going to bring up right now. Some of them might be more developed than others. Some might come easier than others. But it's important to just go in and weigh up, where am I with these different characteristics? So I'd say the first one is change agility, and that's the ability to adapt to new situation and challenges. You know, agile leaders embrace uncertainty. They quickly assess the landscape and implement innovative solutions to navigate, you know, uncharted waters, if you want to put it that dramatically. Then there's people agility. That's another one I think I see quite often. And that's this strong interpersonal and coaching skills that leaders have to support their teams. Because agile leaders who have people agility, they create an environment of trust, empowerment, and accountability, enabling their teams to thrive in the face of whatever it is we're up against. And then one that we can't, you know, run away from, it's result agility. So it's about consistently delivering high quality results in these changing contexts that we're talking about. So an agile leader can maintain this laser sharp focus on key objectives and adapting strategies as needed to ensure successful outcomes. And then the fourth one I want to just point out here is this learning agility, and that's that desire to continuous learning and improving. And I guess for you who are listening in today, you must have that sort of in you quite a lot, because you're sitting here, you're taking time out to actually sit here to learn. But it's also about helping their team to do the same, because an agile leader fosters a culture of growth and encourages their teams to experiment and learn from failures and continuously enhancing skills and knowledge. And one thing that absolutely makes me cringe is leaders who don't allow their employees to have, for instance, a coaching session or take a course or, you know, other learning activities during work hours, that people actually feel they have to do it outside of learn, almost scared of being caught learning. I'm just saying, as a leader, what message are you bringing there? Yeah. So agile leaders create a culture of transparency, open communication, and psychological safety. And they set a clear vision while giving their teams the autonomy to experiment and innovate.
Yeah, I think we've seen that, especially over the last few years as well, Pernilla. You know, and I hate to say the C word again, but the COVID pandemic was one of the biggest crises everyone's had to deal with in varying amounts of uncertainty it's brought. But I certainly saw that it was those agile leaders that weren't stuck in the ways, that were able to pivot their business, pivot their way of working, and just really lead their teams quite fluidly and effectively, even in a remote environment. I mean, all of a sudden we had to change from working face to face to a remote environment. And it was those that just embraced that and implemented what was needed that were able to focus on those positive attainable outcomes and outputs, and within that, then it fostered more of a culture of trust and accountability.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I worked with the director of operations during the very early day of COVID, and he came and said he found it challenging. You know, he didn't feel he was really agile. And we focused on cross-departmental collaboration. And he realized that it was not really an option, but a must to become more agile in order to thrive and turn into, and he did sort of turn into a very agile leader by just trial and not letting, you know, what was happening stop him. And as an agile leader, he fostered this collaboration between the front desk housekeeping and the food and beverage team. And they developed, I think they called it like a guest experience task force that met regularly to discuss guest feedback and adapt services accordingly. And sometimes to adapt, you know, within 24 hours, making those changes. For instance, they introduced this curated in-room dining experience that featured local gourmet chefs and
Lovely.
and enhancing the culinary aspect of the luxury stay. Whereas a lot of places, they closed down their restaurants because they couldn't really sort of figure out how to do it.
Mhm.
The hotel also established a system for collecting real-time feedback from guests. And this data was analyzed weekly to identify trends and areas of improvement. And then they noticed that there was a demand for wellness services. So the hotel quickly introduced virtual yoga classes and some other, wellness packages that could be booked alongside the accommodation, but still within the, the rules and guidelines of what we could do every stage along COVID.
Mhm.
So these things he did, they really resulted in several positive outcomes, increased guest satisfaction, believe it or not, during the early days of COVID, because they personalized service and, they made these innovative offerings that led to increased guest satisfaction scores, actually. Then there was revenue growth, and especially when he shared, compared himself to the comp set, because he was so fast in going in with his teams and responding to feedback. So their in-room dining experience and wellness packages contributed to a 25% increase in ancillary revenue, which is quite a lot, yeah. And then what I think is the key here was the enhanced employee engagement, because during COVID, and especially after, we heard so much about well-being and employee engagement dropping, but he was actually able to increase it even during these very, very difficult times, because he involved staff in decision-making and processes and, learning on the spot, and encouraged cross-departmental collaboration, which really increased employee morale.
And I bet they're still doing the same. No, they carried on to implement it, even though they needed a crisis to make changes. It fostered best practice.
Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that about the employee engagement, because yesterday I was coaching a leader that she's just implemented this feedback process, but more with employees, and she's felt like she's opened up a Pandora's box. Because with all the positive, you also get the constructive, but it's actually enabled her to then address certain things and make those changes. Yeah. So,
and I think even though it is scary to open a Pandora's box, if we don't, we just become the ostrich that hits the head in the sand and thinks nobody can see it. Yeah. It's still there. Yeah.
If you don't know about it, you can't fix it.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think to develop agile leadership skills, it's important to focus on these self-reflections. It's about seeking feedback and continuously expanding your knowledge and capabilities, and not being stuck in where you are. Agile leadership is really a mindset and skill set that can be learned and improved over time. So should we take a look at this in a little bit more in details?
Yeah, sure. We were talking earlier about, from all of our research and experience, with leaders, we've found that to become more agile, there are three key areas, like three key streams that were always present, that we needed to focus on to stay more agile and resilient. So I'll just go through the three. The first was around cultivating a mindset, like you just spoke about, Pernilla, that embraces change and flexibility. So we're seeing challenges more as opportunities. What door can be opened with the change. And then secondly, around that, enhancing our communication channels and the way we communicate with others to ensure that there's clarity and quick decision making, and then the outcome of those decisions is transparent and communicated effectively. And then finally, the third was around developing that emotional resilience, which is absolutely essential to maintain stability and support for ourselves, but also for our team effectively. I think it would be a good opportunity now, Pernille, to really dive into each of those three areas and look at them in a bit more detail.
Yeah. So let's start with embracing a mindset that supports change and flexibility, which is about cultivating a mindset that, you know, where you start seeing crisis. Well, crisis is often, you know, brings unexpected change and challenges. And to stay agile, we need to develop a mindset that sees change not as a threat, but as an opportunity for growth. The example I gave before about the GM, you know, doubling up on guest feedback is one example of that. He welcomed feedback so that change could be made. Feedback and change was sort of embraced by him, and therefore it was embraced by the team.
Absolutely, that growth mindset, isn't it? It's all about that learning and development that we spoke about earlier too. And but how would you suggest doing that, Pernille? I mean, wouldn't it be difficult if you tend to see change as a threat, or if you've really been affected adversely from it before?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing about mindset, because if you're intentional about it, you can overwrite that default that, you know, I tend to see it as something that's difficult for me. But if you can learn to overwrite that and know that you can overwrite this default that you have, then you can start viewing certain things. Then you can start, you know, working and strengthening this growth mindset muscle that we have. And you can do this by asking yourself, what if this happens? Yeah. And it's a difficult question for some to say, because, you know, it's sitting thinking about disasters that we don't want to have happen. But what if this happens? And then consider various outcomes. Well, if this happens, then this might happen. And what might be the impact of this? Because it will help you stay prepared for unexpected changes. So it's not just attending a course and then we know exactly how, you know, to change our mindset. It's something we need to work on continuously.
It's like going to the mindset gym.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So we have the advantage now when, there are some crises happening, and every day we have crises at work. But now when we don't have the big pandemic hanging over us, for instance, we have this advantage of going in and asking ourselves a few what ifs so that we can prepare ourselves for the next big thing. So start off by taking a look back at maybe past experience that you've encountered. Then ask yourself, how did I respond? And this is a difficult one. And I was one that always found that very difficult until I felt the full effect of when you actually ask yourself those questions, how you can go in and, you know, pull away from your default and actually go in and start seeing things in a different light. So how did you respond can be difficult to ask, because you're sort of telling yourself that maybe you didn't respond in the way that's the most appropriate. But then ask yourself, what was the outcome and what did your team do to respond in it? And then look back. Is there anything I could have done differently to get a better outcome? Yeah. And encourage your team to voice their ideas and concerns, because this again links back to establishing this trust. You don't have to sit and do this exercise in a vacuum. Do it together as a team so that everybody gets into this routine of asking, could I have done it differently? Don't dwell on it, but just ask yourself and then move forward. So that's how we create a culture where feedback is valued and acted upon, and fostering an environment that really adapts quickly to new information.
Yeah, absolutely, Pernille. And, you know, I think, you know, I just want to share this because I think some of the challenges I've seen in the past as well is that where we've asking for that feedback is just making sure also that we're acknowledging it.
Yeah.
And then acting upon it.
Yeah.
You know, because again, it's that fostering that culture of feedback, that you can see action being taken on feedback that's been given. Yeah.
I had a manager who taught me a very, very important lesson many, many years ago. And it was to just, when you were offered feedback, just say thank you with a real sort of, I really mean it, thank you. And then you can do with the feedback you want, but say thank you because somebody is actually taking the time to give you some valuable information. Then it's up to you what you do with it, but thank you. Mm. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think that leads us into the second key area that around that strong communication. So, you know, being open about what you want to say and how you say it. And I think it's so important to have clear and strong communication, and especially, you know, if there's a challenge afoot. But, you know, I think we need to enhance communication channels
Mm.
to ensure there's the clarity, the quick decision making I mentioned before, and sharing outcomes as quickly as possible. You know, in challenging times, people expect information or need information to feel calm and to feel in control and to feel as though that they can trust. And I think if you have that, it will minimise uncertainty. You know, I'd recommend one official channel. Ensure everyone knows the best way to reach you and each other, and to keep each other up to date. Because what we don't want to do is to end up with Chinese whispers, because messages get diluted, they get convoluted, and that's when that uncertainty arises. So, you know, being aware of using multiple communication platforms is key as well. But I think we've got to also be realistic that different situations may require different models
Yeah.
of communication. So you might need to use email, instant messaging and video calls, but there should only be one for each, one official channel. You know, if anyone needs that information, that is where they go to for the last critical update and
Yeah.
the last true update, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, and just ensure that everyone knows about it, and you share what you do know, but also share what you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that transparency, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's interesting what you're saying about one communication channel. I've been in situations quite a few times in my career where email and the internet is the source that is breaking down. What then? You know, in this time of technology, and especially for generations that has never really known a time prior to the internet and being online. Uh, I remember I once told one, well, write a memo and put it in the pigeonhole. And they looked at me like, can we just backtrack that for a moment? What are we talking about there? So I really do recommend that you find out your company's policy on how to act and communicate in those cases. In those cases, there is probably an official policy on what to do, but be aware of what it is. And if there's no policy available, when you're not in the crisis, have a think about how you would communicate if everything ceased to work. I remember in most of the hotels I've been in the general manager's safe deposit was a satellite telephone that could be used in these cases. And I must say, you know, they were a little bit like shiny toys. So they were a little bit excited in all the crisis, having to pull out this huge phone that was a satellite phone that could be used when everything else was down. But it helped you communicate with corporate office and home office. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that plan B, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Make sure you got things in place. So I think, you know, to reflect on this, if you are listening in, maybe, you know, have a think about what it means for you. You know, how and what is in place at the moment. And, you know, whilst things are calm, you know, think about how can I implement those regular check-ins with my team as the norm. Not just something that we do as a reaction.
Yeah.
Can be, you know, hourly, daily, weekly, depending on the situation, on the urgency that's required. But I think as well, thinking about how then would I best utilise those meetings to share updates, address concerns and realign goals, just to keep everything moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you and we've spoken about this a few times. It's interesting in crisis. We often see that instinct is to isolate and withdraw. Leaders do that, and I know you and we worked with a few leaders where they sort of went into complete withdrawal and isolated themselves in their little ivory tower, or call it what you want. And it's driven by this insecurity or misguided sense of protection of people and information, and therefore communication suffers. And for those of you who attended some of the previous sessions, first of all, remember you're not expected to know everything about everything. It's it's when we're talking about authenticity, it's being authentic, and it's also being open and honest and saying, I don't know everything. So communicate and be open about what you don't know as much as what you do know. And then also remember what we spoke about last time. If your first reaction normally, like me, like this example I shared last time, when a big crisis arrives, my initial reaction is to slow down and freeze a little bit so that everything almost passes by in slow motion. And it's so that I can get a better overview. But for the outside world, it looks like I've completely frozen. And it wasn't until I made sure that my teams knew that this is my natural response, to just go in and slow down and let things pass so I can get an overview. And if that's how you are reacting as well, it's important to let people know so that they don't think or feel that communication has broken down. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that then helps people to understand you,
Yeah.
but also for you to be more confident in what your reaction and your approach is, which I think again then is that third area that we mentioned, that emotional resilience, to maintain stability and support within the team. And for me, and I'm quite passionate about this, this underpins everything, I think, as emotional resilience is about maintaining your mental and emotional well-being, especially during challenging times. I think, challenges affect us all differently, but it's how, resilience and how much energy we have for it that'll help us to bounce back. And I think it enables you to stay calm. It can help you to make the more rational decisions, and just really support your team effectively. And I think if you don't have this, then it doesn't really matter how strong you are technically, because if your engine isn't working properly, and it fails, you're not going to support yourself or anybody else in driving anything forward.
So how would you do this?
I get asked this quite a lot, and I always say, well, first things first, start today. Don't wait for challenging times. I suppose it's like, and it's up to think about this with the Olympics on, but I suppose it's like an athlete training for a marathon or the Olympics. You wouldn't start learning endurance running as the starter gun goes off.
That's a good
and
one.
expect a positive outcome. Yeah, I mean that'd just be ridiculous. You dedicate yourself to months of preparation and training beforehand. Yeah. And it's like that with resilience and your emotional mindset. One of my clients, when I said this, replied to me saying, well, what happens if a challenging time never happens, or the crisis never happens, and I've just spent all of my time focusing on this? Well, first of all, I'm not saying spend all of your time focusing on it. We only need to take 10, 15 minutes a day of self-care. But my answer was quite simple: change, challenge, crisis. It's inevitable, whether it's large or small. And it's going to be that resilience and ability to deal with all of that will be the deciding factor on how you experience it, and how you and your team come out the other end. So I'd really encourage that you start today. A couple of things that we could look at is practicing mindfulness, some stress management techniques, and just simple exercises, really, like deep breathing, meditation, or short breaks can help managing stress. Or taking a sip of water.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think if anyone listening in would like some more information on this, then please do send me a message. I think it's really important to encourage and model it for yourself and for your team.
Yeah.
What do you do, Peniel, to support your emotional resilience?
I personally run, and I mean, Lisa, you know this very well.
Yeah.
we discuss something big in our business, or there's something that's not sort of a little bit challenging coming up, I will always tell you, let me run on it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And for me, building resilience and clearing my mind really happens when I run. And this is where the pieces sort of falls into place and I regain energy and a clear mind. For others, it might be seeing friends or doing a hobby or taking the dog for a walk or meditating or watching your child do gymnastics,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah. And I think it's really important to find out what it is that helps you. Another thing I must say is having a coach. I'm a coach, but I also has a coach because I understand the value and the importance of it. And having a coach is one of the ways that I stay emotionally resilient as well. Just speaking out the things that are sort of
Yeah.
tightening me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because becoming agile and staying resilient during a crisis involves embracing flexibility and strengthening communication and building emotional resilience as well. So by implementing these coaching points we've talked about, we can navigate through crisis more effectively and emerge stronger. It's not about surviving the storm, we have to remember, but it's learning to dance in the rain. Therefore, I gave that example of one of my clients earlier on, the GM who was able to turn things around because he was not just surviving, he was dancing in the rain.
He absolutely was, wasn't
Yeah.
he? Yeah. And I think I'm just looking at time, Pernille, and I think it's to round off at
Yeah.
will we have a look at some questions that
Yeah.
we can ask ourselves to reflect over?
Yeah. So one question I always recommend is, how can I help myself and my team see change as a positive opportunity? And I think if you're just starting off, uh, with the awareness phase, then start asking yourself, how can I ask myself to see change as a positive opportunity? And then you can eventually ask your team. Another thing is about communication. Communication is a big thing. So what communication channels are in place at the moment? Ask yourself how effective they are. What's my current default? How openly do I communicate? How regularly do I communicate? And this is two ways. I don't know if you have, because I know communication is also a big one for you. So
yeah, and on the two-way point, am I actively listening to what's being said? Or am I just asking questions to make people feel included? What
yeah,
am I active listening, not just to what's being said, I suppose, the body language as well, and how people are feeling and that emotional aspect of it as well. And how can I make communication clearer and faster during a
yeah,
crisis
yeah.
as
What
well?
about what about emotional resilience, Lisa? What would you recommend there when people can go in and sort of self-coach themselves a little bit and get some awareness?
Yeah, I think looking at your current practice, but then also like, what can I do to boost my emotional strength? Um, and write down when something's made you feel good,
Mm.
and release them endorphins and do more of it.
Hmm.
And how can I support my team's well-being in tough times?
Mm.
Um, asking yourself, what emotions are my teams showing right now?
Mm.
And how can I support them through it?
Mm.
And as always, I think we recommend taking time to self-reflect on these questions and to really actively develop areas that need attention, not just for yourself, but for your team too.
Mm. And I think this is such an important point. I mean, we often attend courses and think by attending things will change, or we read a book and believe things will change. But things will actually only change if we start doing things differently and taking some action. So here the action starts with reflecting and understanding ourselves. Same if you want a six pack, you cannot get a six pack by seeing a video or watching a video or reading about it. You have to actually do the work. Yeah.
I wish I could.
Yeah, I know. So, but it's, we need to go to the mental gym, and the mental gym is our gym, isn't it, Lisa? And you mentioned it earlier as well. So join us and other highly successful leaders daily in the mental gym. And that's by asking these questions and gaining awareness. I think that's so important. So I've noticed we've hit the 30 minutes mark. So let me just remind you about our next session, because I think we need to sign off here so that we respect your time. In the next session, we will be building on the last 3 episodes. And in case you haven't attended all our sessions, then you can watch the previous episodes on LinkedIn, or you can go to our YouTube channel and watch them there. So in our next session, we'll be looking at how you can maintain as well as strive to do or improve results, because without results, we are nothing. Yeah. So remember you can always email us should you have any particular questions you would like us to answer. We'd be more happy to do so, either to weave it into the session if we can that, or to just answer you independently. And again, don't forget to head into our YouTube channel and like and subscribe our page, which is called Lead, Learn, and Thrive in Tomorrow's World. And join us for our next episode, which is Tuesday, August 13 at 9:30 a.m. GMT, sorry, at 10:30 a.m. Central European Standard Time, 4:30 p.m. Hong Kong time, and 4:30 a.m. New York or Eastern Standard Time. And until then, stay curious, stay resilient, and stay prepared, and see you on the 13th.